All right, so today we're diving into this book, Python Essentials You Always Wanted to Know by Sean Peters. Um, Looking at the cover, I thought, ooh, a deep dive into Python. I'm ready to, at least try to understand what this whole coding thing is about.
So it really is becoming pretty essential these days, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like everyone's talking about how important coding is, but this book, really drives that point home. Peters actually includes this study about engineering jobs and like Python skills are like super in demand, even for jobs that aren't, strictly software development.
Right. It's true. And it's not even just about, you know, specific jobs, is it? It's like more about how programming is changing, like how we think and solve problems.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
You're hitting on something Peters talks about like a lot. He calls it thinking like a programmer. It's all about breaking down complex problems, right, into
Yeah.
smaller, like more manageable steps.
Yeah. And he uses this great example of, calculating someone's age. And it seems simple enough, but when you like think about it from like a programmer's perspective,
Hmm.
you have to consider all these different conditions like were they born in a leap year? Have they already had their birthday this year? It makes you really appreciate the logic behind even like the most basic tasks.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so to map out that logic, he talks about tools like pseudocode and flowcharts. So it's not like jumping straight into the code, right? It's more like sketching out the blueprint, I guess, first.
Exactly. Yeah. Speaking of blueprints, one of the things that makes Python so appealing, especially for beginners, is its syntax, right?
Yeah.
It's designed to be very readable and intuitive, I think.
Oh, okay. So it's less about memorizing a bunch of, cryptic symbols and more about understanding the logic behind the instructions.
Yeah, that's a really great way to put it. And, Python also has this huge supportive community, which is, a major plus for anyone starting out. There are tons of resources and people willing to, help you along the way.
Hmm. Well, that's great. Okay, so we've got this beginner-friendly language, right? And it's designed for, this logical problem solving. So where do we actually start? Like, what are the, fundamental building blocks?
Well, you need to understand the basic data types.
Yeah.
And these are the different kinds of information a program can, work with. Think of them like different containers, right? One for numbers, one for text, one for true or false values, things like that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do we actually like manipulate and store this information? That's where variables come in, right?
Exactly. Variables are like labels for those containers. They allow us to, reference and update the information they hold. It's like having a labeled box for your tools, so you can easily find what you need.
Right.
Yeah.
So imagine you're building like a simple banking program. You could have a variable called balance to keep track of the account balance, right?
Yeah.
And update it as transactions occur.
Precisely. Yeah. And Python provides this really useful function called print that, you can use to display these variables and see what's happening in your code.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So it's like having a window into the program's like inner workings, right? So you can check if everything is working as expected.
Exactly. Now, building on that, think about how a program actually makes decisions, right? And that's where these things called conditional statements come in.
So if this, then that.
Yeah, exactly. Like imagine you're writing a program to determine if someone is eligible to vote, right?
Right.
You'd use these if statements to check if they meet, the age requirement.
Makes sense. Okay. And what about situations where you need to repeat a task, multiple times? Like let's say you want to print all the numbers from 1 to 10.
Right. That's where loops
Mm.
become really essential. Python provides for loops for iterating over, sequence and while loops for repeating code as long as a condition is true.
Okay. So instead of like manually writing, you know, print 1, print 2, all the way to print 10, you can use a loop to do it automatically.
Precisely. Loops are incredibly powerful for, automating repetitive tasks and making your code, much more efficient.
This is all starting to make sense. So we've got the building blocks for storing information, making decisions, and repeating actions. But what about organizing and managing larger sets of data?
Right. That's where these things called data structures come into play. They provide ways to structure and organize data in a way that makes it, easier to work with.
Okay, so instead of having a bunch of individual variables, floating around, we can group related information together.
Exactly. Think of it like this, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't just throw all your clothes into like one giant pile, would you?
Definitely not. I'd have like a chaotic mess.
Exactly. So data structures help us, categorize and organize our data just like we organize our, belongings.
Yeah.
Python offers different types of data structures, each with its own, strengths. So you have like lists for storing ordered collections of items, tuples for immutable sequences, sets for collections of unique elements, and dictionaries for key value pairs.
So it's like having different types of containers that are, optimized for specific organizational needs.
Precisely. Yeah. And to make things even more organized, Python allows us to break down our code into smaller, reusable chunks called functions.
Okay, so if you have a piece of code that you need to use multiple times, you can create a function for it and then just like call it whenever needed.
Precisely. Think of functions as like mini programs within your, main program. They take input, they perform a specific task, and then they often, return some output.
Yeah,
It's like having a specialized tool for each job, making your code more modular and easier to manage.
got it.
Yeah,
And to take that modularity even a step further, we have these things called modules and packages.
exactly. Modules are like separate files where you can, group related functions and variables together, while packages are like collections of modules. They help you organize larger projects, promote code reusability, and, even collaborate with others.
Oh, okay, that's cool. So it's like breaking down a large project into smaller, more manageable components, each with like a specific purpose.
That's a great analogy. And, to tie this back to the book, Python Essentials You Always Wanted to Know demonstrates these concepts really well through its, examples.
I'm starting to get like a good grasp of the basics now.
Yeah.
What about modeling real world entities within the code? Like if I'm building a game and I want to, represent different characters or something.
Right. That's where this thing called object-oriented programming, or OOP, comes in. OOP allows us to create these blueprints for these entities using classes and then build specific instances, called objects from those blueprints.
Okay. So OOP is about creating these reusable templates for the things we want to represent in our code.
Exactly. Think of a class as a blueprint for a car, right? The blueprint defines like the car's properties, like its color, model, and engine size, and its methods, like accelerate, brake, and turn.
Okay. So I could create a class for a car and then from that class create, different instances like a red sports car, a blue minivan, a green truck, each with its own, specific
You
properties.
got it. OOP allows us to model complex systems in a way that, kind of mirrors the real world, making our code more organized, flexible, and reusable.
I'm really starting to appreciate like the power and versatility of Python, but even with the, best laid plans, sometimes things go wrong, right? We all make mistakes, especially when we're learning something new. So, how does Python, handle those inevitable errors?
Well, errors are a natural part of programming, right? What matters is like how we deal with them. So Python provides tools for, error handling, allowing us to, gracefully catch and manage errors without, completely crashing the program.
I have a feeling this is going to be like a lifesaver.
Trust me, it will be. And it's not just about, fixing errors. It's about understanding like why they occur in the first place. So Python has different types of errors, syntax errors for violations of the language's, rules, runtime errors that occur, during execution, and logical errors where the code runs but, produces unexpected results.
So it's not just about like slapping a band-aid on the problem, right? It's about understanding the root cause and making sure it doesn't happen again.
Exactly. Python Essentials You Always Wanted to Know really emphasizes the importance of, reading those error messages carefully. They actually provide valuable clues for debugging and understanding, what went wrong.
All right, I'm ready to put on my detective hat and tackle those errors head on. But before we, jump into debugging, let's explore how Python is being used to like solve these real-world problems. And Peters includes some fascinating case studies in the book. What are some of the highlights?
Oh, yeah, for sure. They're a great way to actually see Python in action.
Totally. And they cover like such a diverse range of, applications, everything from like handling financial transactions to, optimizing schedules.
Right, yeah. Like, take the change calculation system, for instance. It's something we all encounter pretty regularly, but when you, really think about the logic behind it, there's a lot going on.
It's not just simple subtraction, right? You've got like
Yeah.
different denominations to consider, and you have to make sure you're giving back like the correct change, even when you're dealing with, pennies and rounding.
Yeah, exactly. Peter shows how, Python can handle all that with precision. He uses a dictionary to store the count of each, denomination, which makes it Like
Yeah.
way easier to keep track of everything.
And he converts all the values to cents, right?
Right.
To like avoid those tricky, floating point errors. It's a really elegant solution.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay, so moving on to the employee scheduling case study, it tackles this problem that like so many businesses struggle with creating schedules that meet, everyone's needs.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a giant jigsaw puzzle,
Yeah.
especially when you have employees with different like availability and preferences, and then maybe even, time off requests.
Right.
Uh,
And Python can take all that into account, right? And like generate an optimal schedule.
exactly. It like minimizes conflicts and maximizes efficiency.
The book even mentions adding features to like handle shift swaps and, those last minute changes. It's all about creating this flexible system that can, adapt to like real world situations.
Right, for sure.
And finally, there's the data analysis for investment case study, which, really showcases Python's power for like crunching numbers and identifying those patterns.
Yeah, right.
I think a lot of people, associate data analysis with like spreadsheets, but Python takes it to a whole new level, I think.
Oh, for sure. It lets you go, way beyond simple calculations and really, delve into the data,
Mm.
uncovering, insights that might not be obvious at first glance.
Right. You can like analyze those historical trends and, track market indicators, even like incorporate things like, news sentiment or economic reports. It's like having your own personal, financial advisor, but powered by code.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
So these case studies really demonstrate Python's, versatility. But the book doesn't stop there. It also introduces some emerging trends that are like shaping the future of programming. So like, let's talk about artificial intelligence, which seems to be, everywhere these days. How does Python, fit into that landscape?
Well, AI is all about creating these systems that can, perform tasks that typically require like human intelligence, right? Things like, problem solving and decision making, and even understanding language.
Right, and Python is like a really popular language for, developing AI applications, right? Like, why is that?
Yeah. It's because Python's, clear syntax and extensive libraries make it really well suited for developing these complex algorithms. And it also has like a very strong community of uh, AI developers and researchers, which means, there's a lot of support and resources available.
So Python is like the Swiss Army knife of AI development.
Yeah, you could say that. It definitely has the, tools and the flexibility to handle a, wide range of AI tasks.
Now, the book also mentions machine learning, which seems to be, pretty closely related to AI. What's like the distinction there?
Well, so machine learning is like a subset of AI,
Hmm.
and it focuses on, building algorithms that allow computers to like learn from data without being explicitly programmed. It's like teaching a computer to recognize patterns and make predictions based on, those patterns.
Okay, can you give me an example of how machine learning is like being used in, the real world?
Um, well, like think about Netflix's recommendation system. It analyzes your viewing history and preferences to, suggest movies and shows you might like. That's machine learning, right?
It's amazing how these algorithms can like, personalize our experiences and help us discover things we, might have missed otherwise.
Totally, yeah.
What's another example?
Well, another good example would be spam filtering.
Hmm.
Machine learning algorithms can analyze emails and like identify patterns that, indicate spam, keeping our inboxes, relatively clean.
Okay, so machine learning is about like finding those, hidden patterns in data and then using those patterns to make predictions or take actions.
Exactly. And Python is like right at the forefront of this field, providing, the tools and frameworks to, develop and deploy these powerful algorithms.
Moving on to the Internet of Things, I've, heard that term thrown around a lot lately. How does Python like play a role in that, interconnected world of devices?
Well, the Internet of Things, or IoT for short, is
Mhm.
all about connecting everyday devices to the internet, right?
Yeah.
Allowing them to communicate with each other and with us. And we're talking about, everything here, from smart homes and wearable, fitness trackers to industrial sensors and even like self-driving cars.
So it's basically like creating a network of, intelligent devices that can share information and automate tasks, right?
Yeah.
Where does Python come in?
Yeah. Well, so Proton is being used to like develop the software that runs on these devices as well as like the applications that control them. It's also a popular language for data analysis and visualization, which is essential for making sense of the massive amounts of data generated by these interconnected devices.
I can imagine that, like, as the IoT continues to expand, that the demand for Python developers with, expertise in this area will only increase.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a very, very exciting field with a lot of potential for innovation.
The book also mentions web scraping, which sounds like a fascinating, albeit slightly mysterious, application of Python. What exactly is it?
Web scraping is basically the process of, you know, automatically extracting data from websites.
Hmm.
So, like, imagine you're doing market research and you need to collect data from like hundreds of product pages, right?
Mhm.
Instead of doing it manually, you can use Python to, write a script that will do it for you in like a fraction of the time.
It sounds like, a really powerful tool for like researchers, analysts, and, anyone who needs to gather large amounts of data from the web.
Exactly, yeah. But, with great power comes great responsibility, as they say. There are like, ethical and legal considerations to keep in mind when, doing web scraping.
Yeah, I can imagine that some websites, might not be too happy about having their data scraped without, permission.
Yeah, exactly. It's important to like respect website terms of service and, make sure you're not violating any copyright laws or
Yeah.
always err on the side of caution and obtain, permission if necessary.
Right. Now let's talk about web frameworks, which seem to be essential tools for, web development. How do they like simplify the process of building, websites?
Okay. So web frameworks provide, these pre-written components and libraries that like really streamline the development process, right?
Yeah.
So instead of writing, all the code from scratch, you can leverage the framework's, structure and features to handle, common tasks like routing requests, managing databases, and generating, dynamic content.
So it's like having a blueprint and like a set of prefabricated parts that you can, assemble and customize to like create your website.
That's a really great analogy. And Python has some incredibly popular web frameworks like Django and Flask that like power some of the largest websites in the world.
It's fascinating to see how like these tools empower developers to build these, complex and interactive web applications with like relative ease.
For sure.
Speaking of powerful tools, let's talk about cloud computing. It seems like, everything is moving to the cloud these days. How does Python like fit into that equation?
Well, cloud computing is all about delivering computing services over the internet, and it allows businesses and individuals to like access and manage resources like servers, storage, databases, and software applications on demand without having to like invest in all this expensive hardware or manage it themselves.
So it's like renting computing power instead of like owning it.
Exactly. And Python is a popular language for developing cloud-based applications and managing cloud infrastructure. Its versatility, extensive libraries, and strong community make it a great choice for this rapidly growing field.
We've covered a lot of ground in this episode, from the foundational elements of Python to these cutting edge trends that are like shaping the future of, technology. It's clear that Python is a language with incredible, power and potential. As we head into like the final part of our deep dive, what are, some key takeaways for our listeners?
I think one of the most important things to remember is that Python is, more than just a programming language, right? It's a tool for problem solving, innovation, and creative expression. And with its, clear syntax, extensive libraries, and supportive community, it's a language that is accessible to anyone, who is willing to learn.
It's also a language that is like constantly evolving, right? And adapting to, new challenges, which makes it a really exciting field to be a part of. Whether you're, interested in web development, data science, artificial intelligence, or, really any other field that is being like transformed by technology, Python is a valuable skill that can like open doors and empower you to, make a real impact.
Okay, so we've explored, this vast landscape of Python, but this is just the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Like, what happens after you finish, a deep dive like this? How do you keep that momentum going?
That's a great question. And Python Essentials, you always wanted to know, actually provide some really excellent guidance, for continuing your Python journey. And one of the key things that it emphasizes is the importance of, setting goals and establishing like a routine. Right. So it's like, any new skill that you're trying to, develop, like consistency is key, whether it's, coding for 30 minutes every day or like tackling a new challenge each week. Setting those small achievable goals, can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be like a solitary pursuit, The book talks about the importance of finding opportunities to practice your skills in a more, collaborative setting.
Oh, like joining an open source project or, contributing to a coding community. That sounds like a fantastic way to learn from others and see, how Python is being used in those like real world projects.
Exactly, yeah. Contributing to open source projects is not only a great way to like hone your skills, but also to, you know, give back to the community and potentially like make a real impact.
That's cool. And speaking of community, Python has such a, vibrant and welcoming online community. There are forums, social media groups, and, websites like Stack Overflow where you can connect with other Python enthusiasts, right? Ask questions, share your knowledge.
For sure. Yeah, the Python community is definitely one of its like greatest strengths. It's a place where you can find support, inspiration, and even, mentorship as you continue to, grow your skills.
So we've got goals, routines, community support. It sounds like a pretty solid recipe for, success. But what about those like inevitable moments when you hit a wall, right? And you can't seem to figure out a problem? We all experience like coder's block at some point.
Oh yeah, of course. Debugging is an essential skill for any programmer. And the book, offers some really practical tips for tackling those, frustrating errors. And remember those error messages that we, talked about earlier. They're, your friends, not your enemies.
I'm starting to see that. Instead of feeling like intimidated by those, cryptic messages, we need to learn how to, decipher them and extract the valuable clues that they provide.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. The book, suggests a pretty systematic approach to debugging. Start by isolating the, problem area. Is it a specific function, a loop, or, a conditional statement? Then, carefully examine the code for any typos, logical inconsistencies, or incorrect, variable assignments.
And if you're still stuck, don't hesitate to, reach out for help. That's where like that online community can be a lifesaver.
Oh, for sure. A fresh pair of eyes can often spot a mistake that you've like overlooked 100 times.
Yeah.
And as you gain more experience, you'll start to develop an intuition for, common error patterns and debugging techniques. It, kind of becomes this natural part of the coding process.
So we've covered the learning journey, the importance of practice and community, and even the art of debugging. But let's talk about, careers. How can someone with Python skills like translate that knowledge into a, fulfilling and rewarding career?
Well, the job market for Python developers is, booming. Python's versatility opens doors to a wide range of career paths from, software development and web development to uh, data science, machine learning, and even cybersecurity.
Yeah, the book highlights the popularity of Python in, data analytics, which is a field that's just like exploding with, opportunities.
Absolutely, yeah. With the rise of big data and the increasing demand for data-driven insights, data analysts are in like really high demand across, various industries, and they use Python to, clean, process, analyze, and visualize data, uncovering, trends and helping, organizations make better decisions.
It sounds like a really fascinating field for anyone who, enjoys working with numbers and, extracting meaning from data.
It is. It is. And Python is also a key player in the world of, machine learning, which is really revolutionizing, everything from healthcare and finance to retail and entertainment.
And we talked about some of the, amazing applications of machine learning, like those, personalized recommendations and spam filtering.
Exactly. Yeah. And as machine learning continues to, advance, we can expect to see even more innovative applications, emerge in the coming years.
So whether you're interested in, building intelligent systems, analyzing vast data sets, or creating, cutting edge applications, Python is a valuable skill that can, open doors to like some really exciting and rewarding career opportunities.
It really is a language with endless possibilities.
Mhm.
And one of the things I, appreciate about Python Essentials you always wanted to know is how it not only like, teaches you the technical skills, but also inspires you to like think about the broader impact of your work.
Mm.
It encourages you to see Python as a tool for, solving real world problems and, making a positive difference.
That's a great point. It's not just about, writing code for the sake of writing code, right? It's about using your skills to create something, meaningful and impactful, whether it's developing an app that helps people, manage their finances, building a website that connects people with resources they need, or contributing to a scientific project that, advances our understanding of the world. Python can really empower you to like make a real difference.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this field so exciting. It's not just about technology. It's about the human element behind it. It's about using our creativity, our ingenuity, and our passion to build a better future.
Well said. And on that, inspiring note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Python essentials you always wanted to know. We hope, this episode has ignited your curiosity about Python and given you like the confidence to embark on, your own coding adventure.
And remember, learning to code is, a journey, not a destination. So embrace the challenges, celebrate the victories, and never stop, exploring. The world of Python is, vast and constantly evolving, and there's always something new to discover.
So keep learning, keep coding, and keep diving deep into the world of knowledge.